Have you ever experienced a scary incident while driving at night? In this video we will share the scary true story of someone who was driving at night and experienced being disturbed by an invisible creature. Rain, thick fog, and silent darkness made the travel atmosphere even more tense. Prepare your guts to listen to this story until the end. Here's the story. It was a moonless night, and the only light on the winding country road came from the headlights of Jacob's old sedan. The air was thick with an eerie stillness as he drove, the hum of the engine the only sound breaking the silence. Jacob loved night drives. They gave him a sense of peace and a chance to clear his mind. But tonight felt different. Something about the darkness seemed deeper, the shadows more alive. He had just finished a late shift at the diner and was looking forward to getting home to his cozy, isolated cabin nestled in the woods. As he turned onto the narrow road that led to his place, the mist began to roll in, swirling around the car like ghostly tendrils. He slowed down, squinting to see through the fog. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, Jacob caught a glimpse of movement. He glanced in the rearview mirror but saw nothing. Shaking off the unease, he continued driving, but the feeling that he was being watched lingered. The mist grew denser, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Without warning, the car's engine sputtered and died. The headlights flickered before plunging him into darkness. Jacob muttered a curse under his breath and tried to restart the car, but it was no use. He was stranded in the middle of nowhere with no cell service and an inoperative vehicle. As he fumbled for his flashlight in the glove compartment, a figure appeared in the beam of light, standing still on the road ahead. Jacob's heart pounded in his chest. The figure was cloaked in a dark, tattered robe, the hood pulled low over its face, obscuring its features. It didn't move, just stood there, a silent sentinel in the mist. Summoning his courage, Jacob rolled down his window and called out, "Hello, do you need help?" There was no response. The figure remained motionless, almost as if it were waiting for something. An icy chill crept up Jacob's spine. He debated whether to stay in the car or confront the mysterious figure, but his curiosity got the better of him. Flashlight in hand, he stepped out of the car. The air was frigid, and the fog seemed to close in around him. He approached the figure slowly, each step echoing in the silence. When he was just a few feet away, he stopped. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. The figure finally moved, raising its head slightly. A pair of piercing eyes glinted from the shadows of the hood. "I am the keeper of the night," the figure said in a voice that sounded both ancient and timeless. "I guard the secrets that dwell in the darkness." Jacob's mind raced. "What secrets?" he asked. The figure extended a hand, and Jacob saw a small, intricately carved box resting in its palm. "Take this," the figure said. "It holds the truth of what lies in the shadows. But be warned, once you open it, there is no turning back." With trembling hands, Jacob took the box. It was surprisingly light, yet he felt the weight of its significance. As soon as he grasped it, the figure dissolved into the mist, leaving him alone on the deserted road. Jacob returned to his car, which miraculously roared to life as soon as he sat back inside. He drove home in a daze, the box resting on the passenger seat like a silent companion. Once home, he sat at his kitchen table staring at the box. Curiosity gnawed at him, but so did a sense of foreboding. He decided to open it. Inside, he found a collection of old photographs, letters, and newspaper clippings, each piece a fragment of a larger, darker story about the history of his town, a story of corruption, betrayal, and unsolved mysteries. As he sifted through the contents, Jacob realized that the figure had chosen him for a reason. He had always been drawn to uncovering the truth, and now he held the key to a past that had been buried for decades. The night drive that had started as a routine journey had turned into the beginning of an unraveling mystery. Jacob knew that his life would never be the same. The secrets of the night had found their way to him, and it was now his responsibility to shed light on them, no matter the cost. And so, with a deep breath, He embraced his role as the keeper of the box, determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to the shadows. It was a frigid, moonless night, and the winding road through the forest was shrouded in darkness. Laura tightened her grip on the steering wheel of her old sedan, the only light coming from her dim headlights cutting through the dense fog that rolled in off the trees. She had been driving for hours, exhausted from a long day of meetings and eager to get home. The road stretched endlessly before her, the rhythmic hum of the engine the only sound accompanying her. As she navigated a particularly sharp bend, her headlights caught a figure standing by the roadside, thumb extended in the universal sign of a hitchhiker. Laura's heart skipped a beat. It was rare to see anyone out here, especially at this hour. The figure looked young, a girl with long dark hair and a white dress that seemed out of place in the chilly night. Against her better judgment, Laura slowed down and pulled over. She rolled down the window, her breath visible in the cold air. "Do you need a ride?" she called out. The girl nodded, her eyes wide and pleading. "Yes, please," she replied, her voice soft and trembling. "I need to get home." Laura unlocked the door, and the girl climbed in, bringing with her a wave of cold that made Laura shiver. "Where are you headed?" Laura asked, glancing at her passenger. "Just up the road," the girl replied, her eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. "Not too far." After a few miles, the girl suddenly spoke. "You can drop me off here," she said, pointing to a narrow dirt path leading into the woods. Laura frowned. "Are you sure? There's nothing out here." The girl nodded. "Yes, this is fine. Thank you for the ride." Reluctantly, Laura pulled over and watched as the girl got out of the car. She stood by the side of the road, her figure almost blending into the darkness. "Be careful," Laura said, but the girl was already walking away, disappearing into the fog. Laura drove off, her unease growing with each passing mile. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. When she finally reached the next town, she decided to stop at a diner to grab a coffee and calm her nerves inside. The warmth and light were a welcome contrast to the cold, dark road. Laura took a seat at the counter and ordered a coffee. As she waited, she mentioned the hitchhiker to the waitress, a friendly woman with a kind smile. "I picked up a girl a few miles back," Laura said. "She was standing by the side of the road all alone. I dropped her off near a dirt path, but it seemed strange. Do you know if anyone lives out there?" The waitress's smile faded, and she exchanged a glance with the cook behind the counter. "You saw her?" she asked, her voice low and serious. Laura nodded, a chill running down her spine. "Yes, why?" "That road you were on, and it's known around here for being haunted. People say that a girl died there years ago, hit by a car while walking home. They say she appears to travelers looking for a ride home, but she never makes it." Laura's heart pounded in her chest. "But she seemed so real," she whispered, her mind racing. The waitress nodded. "She always does. You're not the first to see her, and you won't be the last. Consider yourself lucky you did a good deed tonight, and maybe you helped her find a bit of peace." Laura sat in stunned silence, the coffee growing cold in front of her. She couldn't shake the image of the girl, her sad eyes and pale face. As she drove home that night, she couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the hitchhiker sitting in the back seat, a silent reminder of the restless spirits that linger on lonely roads. A week later, Laura found herself driving the same stretch of road. It was late again, the night even darker than before. She told herself it was foolish to feel afraid, but her heart raced as she approached the bend where she had first seen the hitchhiker. As she rounded the corner, her headlights illuminated the same figure standing by the roadside, thumb extended. Laura's breath caught in her throat. It was the girl. The same white dress, the same long dark hair. Against her better judgment, Laura slowed down and stopped. The girl approached the car and Laura rolled down the window. "Do you need a ride?" Laura asked, her voice trembling. The girl nodded, her eyes filled with the same sorrow as before. "Yes, please." Laura unlocked the door and the girl climbed in. As they drove, Laura tried to make conversation, but the girl remained silent, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. After a few miles, she pointed to the same dirt path. "Here is fine," she said softly. Laura pulled over, her heart pounding. "Are you sure?" The girl nodded. "Yes, thank you." As the girl got out, Laura felt a surge of desperation. "Wait," she called out. "What's your name?" The girl turned back, her eyes filled with a sadness that seemed to stretch beyond the years. "Emily," she said. "My name is Emily." Laura watched as Emily walked down the dirt path, disappearing into the fog. She sat in her car, heart racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The next day, Laura drove back to the diner. The waitress recognized her immediately, a look of concern on her face. "Her name is Emily. Do you know anything about her?" The waitress sighed and nodded. "Emily James. She died on that road over 20 years ago. She was walking home from a friend's house when she was hit by a car. The driver never stopped. Ever since then, people have seen her on that road looking for a ride home." Laura couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. She decided to do some research, visiting the local library and searching through old newspaper archives. She found articles about Emily's death, about the mysterious accidents that had occurred on that stretch of road over the years. But there were no answers, only more questions. Determined to help Emily find peace, Laura drove back to the road that night. She parked her car near the dirt path and waited. The night was cold and silent, the fog thicker than ever. After what felt like hours, she saw her Emily standing by the roadside, her white dress glowing in the moonlight. Laura got out of the car and approached her. "Emily," she called out softly. Emily turned, her eyes filled with sadness and longing. "I need to get home," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll help you," Laura said, "but I need to know what happened. Why are you still here?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I don't remember," she said. "I just know I need to get home." Laura reached out and took Emily's hand, feeling a chill run through her. "Let's go together," she said. They walked down the dirt path, the fog swirling around them. Laura could feel Emily's presence beside her, a cold but comforting presence. They reached the end of the path, where it opened up into a clearing. There, standing in the moonlight, was a small old house, its windows dark and empty. "This is your home?" Laura asked. Emily nodded. "Yes, but something happened here. I can't remember what." Laura squeezed Emily's hand. "Let's find out." They walked up to the house and pushed open the door. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Furniture lay in disarray as if the occupants had left in a hurry. As they moved through the house, Laura felt a growing sense of unease. Something terrible had happened here. In the living room, they found a photograph on the mantel. It was of Emily and her family, smiling and happy. But there was something off about the picture, something Laura couldn't quite place. She turned to Emily, who was staring at the photograph, tears streaming down her face. "I remember now. My family, they died in a fire. I was the only one who survived. I was walking home that night when it happened. I never made it back." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. "You were trying to get back to them," she said softly. "But you never could." Emily nodded, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I need to say goodbye." That day experience was a lesson for Laura, and she will never forget the dark incident she experienced when she met Emily. The night was thick with darkness as Sarah drove her old sedan down the lonely stretch of highway. Rain pelted the windshield, creating a hypnotic rhythm that matched the pounding of her heart. She had been on the road for hours, the miles blurring together as she pushed through fatigue and the oppressive storm. Ahead, a sign emerged from the gloom. "Rest area, next exit." Sarah sighed with relief. She desperately needed a break, a chance to stretch her legs and clear her mind before continuing the long journey home. She flicked on her turn signal and took the exit, the tires splashing through puddles as she navigated the slick pavement. The rest area appeared deserted, shrouded in darkness except for a flickering streetlight that cast eerie shadows across the empty parking lot. Sarah parked her car near the restroom building, the rain drumming on the roof as she debated whether to brave the storm to reach the safety of the restroom. Finally, she gathered her courage and dashed through the downpour, her hood pulled tightly over her head. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. The air inside was stale and cold, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. She quickly used the restroom, eager to get back to her car and continue her journey. As she washed her hands, Sarah glanced at herself in the cracked mirror above the sink. Her reflection looked weary, pale in the dim light. Just as she turned off the faucet, she heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible over the sound of rain outside.
Sarah.
Her heart skipped a beat. She froze, her eyes darting around the empty restroom. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. No response. The only sound was the steady drip of water from the faucet. She dried her hands quickly and turned to leave, but as she reached for the door handle, she heard it again, a whisper, clearer this time.
"Sarah, help me."
The voice was faint, desperate. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She slowly turned back toward the mirror, her reflection staring back at her with wide, frightened eyes. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Silence enveloped the restroom. The only movement was the flickering of the fluorescent light above her head. Just as Sarah began to think she had imagined it all, a figure materialized behind her in the mirror, a woman, pale and translucent, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. Sarah spun around, but the restroom was empty. She backed away from the mirror, her heart pounding in her chest. The figure remained in the reflection, reaching out as if trying to touch her.
"Please, help me."
The ghostly woman pleaded, her voice echoing in Sarah's mind. Sarah stumbled backward, her mind racing. She had heard stories of haunted rest stops, but she never believed in ghosts until now. The figure in the mirror seemed so real, so desperate. Summoning her courage, Sarah stepped closer to the mirror. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice trembling. The woman's expression softened, a flicker of hope in her eyes.
"I need your help. I've been trapped here for so long waiting."
Sarah's mind raced. "How can I help you?" The woman's gaze flickered toward the door.
"There's a room hidden in the back. Find it, please."
Before Sarah could respond, the restroom door creaked open behind her. She spun around, expecting to see another traveler, but the restroom was still empty. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah approached the back wall of the restroom. She ran her hands over the cold tiles, searching for any sign of a hidden room. After what felt like an eternity, her fingers brushed against a loose tile near the floor. With a deep breath, Sarah pushed the tile aside, revealing a small, narrow passage leading into darkness. The air inside was musty, tinged with a scent of damp earth. Sarah hesitated for only a moment before stepping into the hidden room. The space was small, barely large enough to stand in. Dust motes danced in the beam of her flashlight, casting eerie shadows on the walls. In the corner, she saw a wooden chest, covered in cobwebs and age. Heart racing, Sarah approached the chest and lifted the lid. Inside, she found old photographs, letters yellowed with age, and a small, ornate locket. She picked up the locket, a sense of sorrow washing over her as she studied the faded photograph inside. A woman, smiling brightly, her eyes filled with hope. Suddenly, Sarah heard footsteps echoing in the passage behind her. She spun around, but there was no one there. The air grew colder, a chill settling over her skin.
"Thank you."
A soft voice whispered in her ear. Sarah turned back to the locket, but the photograph was different now. The woman's smile had faded, replaced by an expression of peace. With a sense of closure, Sarah left the hidden room and returned to her car. The rain had stopped, and the night air was crisp and cool. She looked back at the restroom building, a feeling of sadness mingling with relief. As she drove away from the haunted rest stop, Sarah couldn't shake the memory of the woman in the mirror. She knew she had helped her find peace, but the encounter would stay with her forever, a reminder that sometimes the darkest places hold the deepest secrets, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover them.